Hey everyone! Now today I'm very excited because we've got some new things to show you. These are products that I haven't used before until very recently, and also I want to clear up some of the common mistakes that beginners make using resin. So let's dive on in. Let's dive into ultraviolet curing resin, and this is the little kit that we've got from Craft Resin, and very nicely you've got 3 good sized bottles of the resin. You've got top breach, just the right size nozzle under there, and you've got another stirring thing because yes indeed you can mix things in with your ultraviolet curing resin as well. And of course you've got some really good instructions, and they're very simple for ultraviolet curing resin. You have got squirt it in, put your lamp on it. Again, there's some common mistakes that beginners make with this. We'll pick those up. I think the most common is using ultraviolet curing resin when really you should have been using epoxy because it's too big. Here we go. Important tips for best results. Layering. Now that's a good one. I would say that layering is where people go wrong most. You want 1 to 3 millimeters maximum of your UV resin. So cure one layer, do another layer, cure another layer. And I will demonstrate that in a moment because this is probably the right sort of depth anyway for UV resin. Mixing in the colours I think is another place that people go horribly wrong with UV resin, and that is because you can put too much and the resin just simply won't cure because the light, the ultraviolet curing light, can't pass through it, which is always going to be a problem. And you do need a decent ultraviolet light. The little ones that you use for nail art and things like that, they're usually okay. I tend to go for ones that are designed for resin. The only real difference is you tend to get a lot more lights in them than a cheap nail art lamp. Right, so that's going to be a good couple of millimeters deep, isn't it? So what we're going to do now is get in our ultraviolet lamp. And I've got a couple of different lamps to show you. This is a big one. Now the only drawback with torch shaped lamps, and I've got quite a few of these, but the only drawback is you have got to stand with your hand over it, like this. Now it should take a couple of minutes to cure. Depends how strong your lamp is though, and this is what I mean about using stronger lamps. In fact, in the instructions, yeah, it says that they recommend a 24 watt power or upwards and cure for 1 to 3 minutes, depending on the thickness of the design. Now I'll show you another little trick here actually. Now flip it over, cure from the back. Another mistake, common mistake that people often make with ultraviolet curing resin is trying to use opaque moulds. This is what you want. Can you see? You can see through it. It's a bit translucent. That allows the light to pass through it, which means you can know that you can get your light right in there and cure all of the resin. And you can do this flip it over from the back trick, which is great. There are double-sided lamps out there as well, so you can cure from both sides. Those are really good. So there's no hanging around, no mixing, no waiting, and straight away, look how clear that is. Isn't that lovely? Can you see? Now all I needed to do was be a bit more vigilant and spot that bubble and get a little stick and tease it out. That would have done it. So I think when people get sticky, this is a problem I hear a lot with ultraviolet curing resin, getting stickiness in their finished pieces, and it just won't cure for hell or high water. Now the trick with that really is to, 1, use a good resin. I used to get that problem a lot, and it turned out that the resins I was using, I was trying to economise by buying cheap resin. Silly idea, didn't work. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mix in a little bit of this magenta, apparently, powder with this one. Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, I'm going to mix a bit more in. So if you mixed up a colour you really like and you ended up with a load left, just put it somewhere dark, like in I've got some little black pots that I put them in if I've accidentally mixed up a load, and then I put them on a dark shelf and it'll keep. Look at that, isn't that lovely? So what we're going to do now is spoon that with something a little bit pointier than that into the mould. For that I'm going to use a fine tip swab. So we're going to put, where are we, which one are we doing? Let's do the flame ones. Let's do pink flames, because this is the one I was kind of pointing at, wasn't it? Now where you've got a little mould that's got like layers like this, you see there's a deeper area and then there's raised areas. So you can work your ultraviolet curing resin that you've mixed up in one colour. And I have put quite a lot of colour in there, so I'm not going to want to go too thick, and I'm going to want to cure it for a good long time. because that might be verging on enough to stop the light going through. The worst is dark colours. If you're trying to make black, then you want to use even less of the mica powder and work in even thinner layers, because you've got this, this problem of the light not being able to get through. So in particular, the fact that I'm using such a strong colour makes it more important than ever to do the layers. Don't forget that. It's a really important tip. I'm going to get the other lamp out that I've got. And this is the sort that typically does come with these kits. You need a battery charger to go with it, but you see lots of lights. They are basically nail art lights, but yeah, I like to get the proper ones that are branded for the resin, just because they often come with starter kits. I do love a good starter kit. And we're going to put our little light over it. So we're going to leave that for a couple of minutes now. The other thing you can use this stuff for is for top coating. It's really nice. In fact, I'll show you on. I'll probably show you on this one. You can use it to dome. Again, we're going to flip it over. So that should be cured enough to put our second layer in. And like I said, we're going to go for the yellow, but then we're just going to put clear on the back of these, just for the sake of variety, really. Don't forget as well, always put the top on your UV resin and store it back away somewhere darkish, because you don't want it curing in the bottle, and that's why they come in black bottles. And also, it's very easy to leave the top off and then you find the top's all stopped up because they've bitten the nozzle's cured. If it's by your window. I tend to do ultraviolet curing work on dull days and in the evenings, things like that. So, second layer going in. Don't forget, when you're mixing in the colours, like I said, you've got to be careful not to go too far so that the light doesn't pass through. And I am really pushing it here because this is a lot of colour. Hopefully, because they're lighter colours, we're okay. But don't forget, this also applies to glitter, inks, liquid dyes. You can get liquid dyes for your resin. It's very easy to put way too much and then it just won't cure. Just experiment a bit, you'll soon find your feet. I think this is probably right at the limits, but all the same, this is in layers. In fact, I think there might be a third layer coming up. So let's get that cured up now. Okay, so I've given it about a minute on each side, but what I am now going to do is put the final coat in and then we'll cure it really, really thoroughly. So we're going to have a bit more again of the yellow, even though it's thick. And the other thing I'm going to do is top up these little guys. Oh, there's that little bit of clear. So that's probably more the sensible level of colour that you want in your UV resin. You can see it's still slightly translucent. I'd recommend that's normally the way to go. Right, let's get that properly cured. Now this time I'm going to leave it under for a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes probably, a bit longer than they recommend, and that's simply because there is quite a lot of colour in that resin. The other thing I'm going to do is pop these under here, because cure off the resin that's in your little pot, because you can just pop that out afterwards as well. Now I like these sort of little stand-up lamps because you can wander off and put the kettle on. And I believe it is one similar to this that they're putting in their kit. Well, this should be nearly cured now, but we can't, and we can tell because, look, the stuff in the pots is cured. And that's all you do, you cure it up and then you pick it out. And it does mean you can just go around with a bit of sellotape and pick the rest out if you want. Although these are just mixing pots, so I'm not as precious about them as I am with moulds. So sometimes I do just get one of my wipes and go around those. But that's how you get the big chunk of it out. Right, let's see if this is done now, shall we? We need to turn it over again, of course. Like I said, I'm giving it a darn good cure. So give it another minute from this side. Right, shall we get them out? And then I'll show you how to dome using the UV resin. But that is cured already. Gosh, isn't that adorable? Now there's a beginner mistake, which of course I did deliberately. See, there's a bubble trapped in the bottom there. What you need to do is, to avoid that sort of thing, is to just go around with one of those, with a micro brush or one of those fine tip swabs that I've been using, and just poke around in the corners. Ta-da! There we go. We have two colours in one piece, and it's quite 3D. Now, what can happen is if you've overspilt a little bit, you get a bit round the edge like that. Now, all you do to get rid of that is you get your completely mica powder covered scissors and you trim it off. Cuticle clippers work well as well, you know, the sort that they use for nails. Those work really well. If the resin is still soft, if it's which is usually with the epoxies, then you can just use a deburring tool. So what we're going to do is, most people seem to start in the middle, so I'll go with that. I usually start around the edges, but most people seem to prefer around the middle. And then you get a pointy thing. And in my case, the pointy thing will be a micro brush. And we're just going to go around and push it out to the edges. Now the thickness of the resin, and this is a really nice viscosity, it's quite viscous, and that means it's going to be holding that surface tension. This is what I meant about poking bubbles out. This is a fairly bubble-free one from what I'm seeing, which is fantastic, isn't it? Well, you can see I've got a little tiny bubble here. What am I going to do? Pop in. So just make sure you've done your final bubble popping session before you get your lamp out, but you've got plenty of time to do that. And can you see how the surface tension is holding that around the edges there? So I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. We're going to give that a good cure. And then we have our nicely domed piece. You can always put a second layer over if you want, but can you see it's just got a very slightly raised surface? You can put more. You could do another layer, but I think that gives it a lovely finish. Now, if you've got still got any little bits of overspill here, you can just go around those with the nail file, and then you've got a perfect piece. You could always dome the back as well if you want to give that a bit of a finish. And again, you can go around with the nail file, but you can certainly do that. So that's done. We've had a look at our UV resin. I have to say, dead impressed with this one. I'm not getting any stickiness. I've got my gloves off now so I can really check. No stickiness at all. That is just a good, glossy, glass-like almost finish. Fantastic stuff. Love it. So very impressed, I have to say. Well done, Craft Resin. We'll have a quick look at the final look as well at our little ultraviolet resin piece. So remember that you can use the epoxy resin as well for small pieces like this if you want, but you're going to wait a lot longer. But you might still prefer that. But I think that is just so good. I mean, there's no stickiness, it's glossy. I mean, how easy was that to make? It's amazing. Yeah, I like this resin. It's really good stuff. Thanks again to Craft Resin for sponsoring this video, of course, and I love your products. As I'm filming this, that new ultraviolet kit that I was mentioning earlier has arrived, and I'm surprised by how big the actual lamp is that comes with it. So look out for another video soon where I will be showing you that kit. Again, it looks pretty darned impressive to me. But yeah, really like this stuff. I'll see you for the next one.